Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's video. Now, in today's video, we have something that we have never done in depth before, and that is we are going to be going in depth of the TNA and NXT rivalry. Now, we know Showdown is next week. I mean, we literally have no time to be wondering on what's going to happen. You just have to lay down your predictions and hope that they're going to be right. So obviously, I'm going to put the binder back over here because we got all the papers we need right here. So this is going to be a very, very interesting video. Hopefully this works out. I have everything we need to know about the NXT and TNA future, past, where the rivalry came from, how it originated, and where it came from here. So let's hop right into it. Starting off, January 16th of 2025, we see them sign the partnership deal. And before the partnership, we actually see Roxanne Perez defeat Jordynne Grace at NXT Battleground on May 30th of 2024. So mid-year of 2024, we see Roxanne defeat Jordynne, which was the first crossover. And it wasn't supposed to happen. So very cool to see. But then, I believe that during that time, Jordynne was signed to WWE, which it was still super cool to see because I believe it was right after, a couple of months after, we saw Jordynne Grace in the Royal Rumble. So very cool to see. We would then see Trick Williams defeat Joe Hendry at Battleground for the TNA title on May 25th of 2025. So exactly a year later, and exactly, let's see, January, February, March, April, May, like 4 months after we see the partnership be made, we see Trick Williams already make big moves in winning the title from Joe Hendry. So already stirring up some controversy, already stirring up some things between TNA and NXT, where obviously now we would really want to see Trick Williams keep the title, right? Everybody wanted to see Trick Williams win the title. We know last night we had a loyal supporter, an Italian Pigeon, and he's back for the day stream. Not a lot of people joined the day stream, so big respect to Italian Pigeon in the chat. But yeah, so starting off, Trick wins the title. I don't think Roxanne and Jordynne, that match, meant anything to the rivalry, but you could put it in there. You know, it was still a big piece of TNA and NXT history, so put it in there. We then see, honestly, the biggest part that really, really flamed this rivalry in JC Jane defeating Masha for the TNA title, becoming double champ, becoming the NXT champion and the TNA champion. So that means that TNA would obviously want to reclaim both of their championships. Now NXT has both the championships. What are you going to do? You got to go reclaim them. So that's what NXT was trying to retain their titles, but TNA was coming after them. That was on July 20th. So now we're inching a lot closer to what it is today. We then see Trick come out and brag about being the TNA champion multiple times, though he was never NXT champion while he was holding the TNA title. So Oba was the champ the whole time, destroying Javon, which was a very sad day. Even Trick getting destroyed at Stand and Deliver earlier in the year. Trick comes off the loss at Stand and Deliver, wins the TNA title, one of the biggest moments, if not the biggest moment of his career. We then see Trick defended that TNA title against Joe Hendry, Elijah, Moose, and Mike Santana. So him defending against all of these TNA talents is great. And all the matches that I just listed were bangers. You know, him and Moose had an awesome match at a TNA pay-per-view. Obviously, Joe Hendry getting destroyed by Trick Willie. And then Elijah, just a little work on NXT, but it ended up being a title match. So we saw Trick defend against all of them on separate dates, obviously. But then things started heating up whenever we would see TNA reclaim one of their titles, and JC Jane losing the title in a triple threat match to Ash by Elegance, in which that match was JC Jane versus Ash versus Masha Slamovich. Ash would win the championship, and then we know she would let her relinquish it at Victory Road earlier last week. So obviously, big news there. Then we would get to NXT Homecoming, where during the show we would see multiple TNA superstars being shown on screen, on X, on social media, everywhere, showing their displeasure with NXT, saying that NXT was being disrespectful to TNA by doing this NXT Homecoming. Now, Personally, I did not think that meant any sense. I didn't think it meant anything to the storyline at first. But then looking into it, we see more and more messages coming out of TNA stars not being happy with NXT doing this homecoming right as the war is about to happen. So NXT homecoming was the verge before TNA was like, this is over, let's invade. So then we get to the invasion. On September 23rd, 2025, TNA invades NXT. That was last week's NXT. Not last night's, but last week's. Where we would obviously see Santana, Billy McKay. We would see all of them in the crowd during that match, but then eventually we would see a big old brawl that would bring out the NXT locker room and TNA talents as well. That gets us to later dates where we would see after Victory Road and No Mercy, which it was pretty surprising, honestly. We didn't see any storyline building of a invasion, which was supposed to be called Invasion, but was announced as Showdown right before NXT, which was announced by Santino Marella on the actual show. But we did not see any storyline building besides after Victory Road. We would figure out while Leon was in the ring after defending against Myron Reed, we would figure out it will be Leon Slater and Javon Evans, which will play a huge part in last night's NXT. So we will get into that. But we would see Showdown be announced. It was a big time thing. We obviously know there was talking. They were talking earlier in the week, figuring out if they wanted to do a show or a PLE, which I think personally, we know obviously it's going to be on the CW network next week, October 7th. TNA versus NXT. They have their own show, but it's on the CW. So normal way you watch NXT, but it's going to be a way more high profile show, obviously. So that's going to be exciting to see. But now, that's the last we've heard at the time. But now we get into last night's results. And this is only including things that would go towards the TNA and NXT rivalry. We kick things off. Ricky Saints coming out to "You Deserve It" chants. Big to know. People were definitely skimming over that during the show, saying, like, I know a lot of your favorite creators were skimming over the fact that the fans were saying "You deserve it." We shouldn't be. That is the reason why Ricky Saints is the captain of the NXT men's team, because the "You deserve it" chants are flowing so heavy. And also because he's a good guy, Trick's a bad guy, but they got to come together to defend their brand. So Ricky obviously being the captain, we would then see JC Jane come out and tell him to lock in pretty much. We have a brand to fight for until eventually Ava would come out and announce JC and Ricky as the team captains of NXT. So big news there, which nobody was surprised to see Ricky and JC be the captains. We would then see Santino come out. And this is where the real shockers happened. Everybody expected Mike Santana to be the captain of the men's team, but nobody expected, or which I didn't expect at all, for Kalani Jordan to be the women's captain of TNA. After winning the TNA title, after Ash by Elegance had to relinquish it because she has an injury, we would see Kalani Jordan defeat Lei Ying Lee after going through a battle royal, and them two being the last two. Kalani, obviously, having to beat Lei Ying Lee as Andy Hartwell as a special guest referee. So now you wonder, man, that switches up the whole trajectory of the team. Because personally, I will share what I thought the teams were going to be, because I wrote down every single one of them. I know I shared 2 teams for the women's on my Instagram, but the men's I have wrote down 2 before this was obviously announced. But then to kick off after the opening segment where we would figure out Kalani and Santana as the TNA captains and JC and Ricky Saints would be the NXT captains, we would see Jada Parker defeat Lash Legend, which would put Jada into the women's NXT team. Big match to open the show. Lash Legend obviously saying that she would love to fight for her brand, but Jada Parker obviously being a staple of NXT this year, being one of the hottest workers and being one of the most dedicated workers that has been on the show, she deserved to be on there. So we cannot take Jada Parker out of the equation. She is on the team. But then we get Javon and Leon Slater being caught talking backstage. They're facing at Bound for Glory, but they're also on 2 separate brands and are most likely going to be picked for the team. We now know later in the show, we figure out that Giovanna and Leon will be on separate teams fighting for their respective brands. But big thing to look at there, we figure out that there will be a tag match, Nico and Sean versus Giovanna and Leon be announced there. Big news. But then during that, one thing that definitely flew over some people's heads, Lyra giving Tatum Paxley the Lyra Valkyria doll. And whenever she gives her this doll, we see Tatum throw the Izzy doll back in Izzy's hands. And then obviously the picture that Tatum posted with the Izzy doll laying in the background and Lyra doll up front. And her, I don't remember the exact caption, but it was something saying that the Lyra doll was better than the Izzy doll, which is big thing to say. So I think that's big news. And obviously knowing Tatum obviously has more attachment to Lyra Valkyria than she does Izzy Dame is a crazy thing to say. Izzy obviously took her under her wing whenever she was struggling the most after we saw Priscilla Kelly, Gigi Dolan, as well as Isla Dawn, her former friends, get released. She instantly went into sorrow and just was mourning, as the New Day likes to say. And Izzy Damon, the Culling, would pick her up and take her in. But now, Lyra Valkyria is back, and we see Izzy not know how to handle that. Because now this is 2 straight weeks on NXT Homecoming. I don't believe we saw her last week. We may have saw her last week. I can't specifically remember because it was just such big stuff happening with the invasion. But now we're seeing her pop up this week. Give her this doll, and now Lyra and Tatum's kind of buddies again. Will we see them compete in in-ring action together? Probably not, because we know that Lyra has her own storyline going on Raw, which is very confusing to me. She's obviously playing one of the biggest roles in Bayley's double-sided character, so her being on NXT and being on Monday Night Raw is not the smartest decision, because you could definitely fumble those two. Lyra can act a certain way and then mix them up. We've seen that happen before in WCW as well as ECW and past storylines, so definitely need to be watching out for things there. But that's a big thing to keep an eye on, and that'll be something that we come back to during the main event match. We would then see Mustafa Ali in TNA, leader of Order 4, come out and interrupt Ethan Page and says that he had a title match planned, and before he got released, which he said was 749 days ago, he got released right as he was about to do his North American title match a few days later against Dominic Mysterio. So Ali obviously saying, I was once going to have a chance at that title, but they released me. So now I get the chance to beat you to become the new North American champion, which I think is going to happen. And it was obviously announced Mustafa Ali will face Ethan Page next week for that North American championship. May just be me. I don't know. A lot of people have been disagreeing around here just because of how dominant Ethan Page was and how much Mustafa Ali definitely has showed out in TNA this year, but not as much as I would love him to. So I think that, yes, Mustafa will defeat Ethan Page for that North American Championship with TNA bringing home an NXT title, but that would also mean that the rivalry will not end there, and NXT still has something to prove, and that's where we would 9 times out of 10 get NXT invading TNA this time. So another thing to look out for, but if you put it on my table, definitely giving it to Ali there. We then would see Josh Briggs versus Miles Bourne. To end the match, we would see Josh try to wrap the chain that he was wearing around his neck, which was pretty suspicious. I can't lie. Which was pretty suspicious for the sole reason of Jasper Troy. He has that chain around his neck. He was shown earlier in the night to be maybe one of the people who would join the team, and which Ricky Saints would say. So, did Josh? I don't know. Definitely some suspicion there, but it is what it is. Josh would try to use that chain, but he would then get stopped by Matt Cardona, TNA superstar, which would not get picked. We will definitely get into more of that because there's a storyline of brewing here that I think could be big. It could be something that could lead into next week, but it has not been announced. I think it'll be one of those things. Matt Cardona, obviously a big social media presence. He will probably take some shots at Briggs during the week, which would cause that match to get announced. But yeah, we would see Miles get the win off of Cardona stopping Briggs from cheating. So Miles will be added to the team as well. We would then see Santana ask Jordan Grace and Joe Hendry where they lie. This was probably the biggest moment backstage of the night. And I say this because Jordan Grace, obviously being a TNA stan, being somebody who has been in TNA and has done great work in TNA, having match of the years. So, valid question, Santana asked. And Jordan, I don't know which one she would pick here. Would she pick NXT? She's obviously coming off a hot win against Blake Monroe after getting her hair cut. But I don't know. And Joe Hendry, on the other hand, him obviously, after his contract's running up, obviously joining NXT, he is going to be picking NXT sooner than later. So will he play a major part in the role? You never know. I think that he definitely will, though. Once again, if it gets slid on my table, I say we turn Joe Hendry to NXT, have him full-blown NXT, but they obviously didn't play that role. We would see Lainey Reed confirm that she was the one that attacked Lola Vice, and she was the one who attacked Lola, helped JC retain the title, and also said that Jasmine Nix did not fit in. So, big part to end that one out. But then, we keep it going. Flipping pages. We see Lola Vice defeat Fallon Henley to be on the team. So, very big news there. Lola's on the team. Now, JC's going to have to side with the person she just beat. So, they're going to have to put their differences aside to, do their thing. We would see Javon Evans and Leon Slater defeat Nico Vance and Sean Spears in a heck of a match. And I said it on last night's review. I know a lot of you guys tuned into that. That was super cool to see. But last night, I did say that if Leon and Javon ever teamed up on the same tag team in the future, hopefully the near future after this rivalry ends, I think that they could be the greatest tag team of all time. And I feel like the TNA and NXT would be very stupid to not put them together. But that would also leave them in a weird spot. Nobody knows the deal that Leon Slater has with TNA, but we do know that it's a multi-year deal between WWE and TNA. So we know that there can still be alignments there during the years that we will not have to give up on instantly. But obviously a very great match. But now we get to the summit, the draft, the biggest part of the night. We obviously would see them invade in a Cybertruck, and we would see them come in a Cybertruck and invade NXT, which one thing that I pointed out, I won't speak too much on it. You can go back to the NXT review that I did last night to see my thoughts on it. But they put up in the same Cybertruck that Shawn Michaels was in earlier in the night, and in the caption it says, I swear I'm team backtrack. He said he was in the same Cybertruck that TNA pulled up in, and he said in the caption of that video, I swear I'm team NXT. So Shawn better not switch up. If Shawn switches up, it's going to be pretty crazy. But I think it's funny because Santana obviously being the captain, Kalani obviously being the captain, Santino being the person who's the leader of them all, and the leader of NXT is Ava, the brand general manager. But then you also have Shawn Michaels. So should we have Carlos Silva be out here as well? Or is he not going to play a part in this at all? Him obviously handing the title to an NXT star at Victory Road and Kalani Jordan. Obviously not something he wants to do, but he had to do it. He was handing the title to everybody. So big news there. Will Carlos Silva maybe take out Shawn Michaels? I would love to see that. Be something I'd be intrigued about. But let's get into the draft picks. Feels like we're in the NBA draft, folks. But let's get right into it here. The men's NXT team is going to be Ricky Saints, NXT champion, just beat Oba Femi, one of the longest reigning NXT champions. Trick Williams, the TNA champ, obviously winning the TNA championship from Joe Hendry in that match. Javon Evans, having great work in 2025, not being used enough. And then Miles Bourne. Do not know how much I like that last pick. Definitely thought we could have added Oba, but that's just telling us that Oba's going to that main roster. Oba's at the next level. We all know it. Nobody can deny that Oba deserves to go to the next level. So we're happy that Oba's going. It is what it is. And on the TNA side, We obviously have Santana as the captain. Frankie Kazarian, international champion, winning it from Steve Macklin at Victory Road. And then Moose, big part of the team. Obviously, him facing Trick Williams earlier this year, as well as Oba Femi. Oba did defeat Moose earlier this year. But Trick and Moose definitely had their fair share of matches and interactions. And lastly, Leon Slater to top that TNA team off, being the X Division champion. So big there. Then we get to the women's side. Obviously, we will mention everybody who's been left out and the reason why they may be left out. NXT team, JC Jane, NXT champ. Sol Ruka, Speed champion, North American champion. GOAT, you know. Jada Parker, doing great things this year, and Lola Vice, the person who has had a Cinderella story this year, but has not completed much of nothing. But JC explained this very weird here. JC had said that Lola was the hardest hitter in the locker room, and it wasn't even close, and she said from personal experience. So, looks like they're on the same page, which makes me believe that the NXT women's team is going to beat the TNA women's team. But let's get to the TNA women's team. Kalani Jordan obviously being the TNA champ, not for very long. We see the Inspiration, in which that is Jessie McKay and Cassie Lee. And then Mara Sade, the underdog, says Kalani Jordan. And that last pick, something that I don't know. I don't know that that's a great pick. Obviously, we would all put Masha Slamovich in there if she wasn't dealing with the things she was. That everybody can agree with. But I think that for sure, big point right there. And putting Mara Sade last. Mara being an underdog. Being somebody who has made a lot of noise in TNA recently. I like that pick, honestly. I do. Formerly Jakara Jackson in NXT. But one thing I do want to say, and I do want to give a shout out to Wrestling Days, because he pointed this out and I really thought it was good and I did not even think about it. What if we would have saw Lash Legend defeat Jada Parker, where we would see Lash Legend be on the NXT team, Mara Sade, formerly Jakara Jackson, Metaphor going against each other? Man, imagine that. I feel like that the two brains of TNA and NXT didn't come together when they were thinking about their teams. Because if they did, they definitely would have pulled the trigger. But at the same time, you cannot leave Jada out. You can't leave Soul out. You can't leave JC out. And you definitely can't keep Lola out. So, I would not put Lash over Jada. But for storyline purposes, I definitely would. Because them going against each other, I know that was a bit of a ramble there. Jakara, Mara Sade, and Lash Legend going against each other in a match against each other at the Survivor Series type match. People were saying that they thought it was going to be 5 people. I always knew it was going to be 4 just because they did announce that. But I think it's definitely cool that we see Mara Sade be on the team. I just do wish that we would have saw Lash Legend, but I can't keep Jada out. So both teams are very good. Now let's talk about the people we left out. Masha Slamovich, for obvious reasons, being left out. We all know we would have put her on the team, but for who? I think that in this case, she would have been in Mara Sade's spot. And honestly, if you look at the team, all of these people on the TNA team has been in WWE. So that's not a good look. That's not a good look at all. The TNA men's team is not that way. We obviously know we have never saw Santana, Frankie, Moose, or Leon in WWE before, so they're a fresh team. But then you look at the women's TNA team, and it's all former WWE talents, formerly known as the Iconics in WWE, and Jakara Jackson. So, and then obviously Kalani Jordan being a WWE talent already. So that's not a good look for sure, but it's interesting because that's the best they got. That women's division is not looking very great, but I mean, that's all you got. So, yes, I would put the Inspiration over the Elegance brand, but that's just because they've made more noise in 2025. I feel like the Elegance brand have made noise in Ash by Elegance and Ash by Elegance only. I think that Ash is the only person that's made noise out of the Elegance brand. Obviously, Maggie Lee making some noise as well, her being an online persona. But I think that right now, the Inspiration will be the better choice over the Elegance brand. But definitely cool to see. Matt Cardona has been left out of the men's team, and I don't think that this is smart at all. Now, going back to what happened earlier in the show, could we see Cardona face Briggs at next week's showdown? I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think that it's a big enough storyline. I don't think we've had a big enough build. I don't think that the rivalry's been enough build. So for that, I'll say no. I think Cardona's just been awkwardly left off. But you never know. He could be booked for an indie show the same day as next week's showdown. So always got to take that into consideration. We obviously talked about Obafemi. Him probably 9 times out of 10 going on the main roster. I did predict that we would give Obafemi 3 weeks after the invasion to put him against Sami Zayn on SmackDown and him win the U.S. title. Jumping the gun just like that, having him win the U.S. title, I think is a smart choice. Josh Briggs, obviously, being off, I think it's the same thing with Cardona. Obviously, he's not going to any indie shows, but if he does get on a match with Cardona, that'll be pretty cool. And lastly, Jasper Choi being left off, I feel like it is kind of criminal, but there's no other person you could put on. But yeah, I think that the main thing for me is everybody on those teams look good except for Miles Bourne. I think that Miles could definitely be taken out for somebody like a Jasper Troy. We need size in this NXT team. And yes, we do have size and Trick and everything like that. We got the bounciness in Javon, and we got the athleticism in Ricky, and Miles just being a dog, I guess, being somebody that's always going to fight for the brand. But I feel like that overall, we could have definitely put Jasper Troy in here instead of Miles Bourne. I wouldn't have hated that. But yeah, because he has no beef with any of these guys. Obviously, he did face Javon and Ricky earlier in the year. But it is what it is. But man, I think that overall, it's going to be a super fun show next week. I'm excited to see how it all pans out. And I thank everybody for joining into the stream because I know this was an early one. This will probably be posting tomorrow. So just be ready for that. Obviously, Evolve tonight. I expect you guys to watch that if you're real wrestling fans. I expect you to watch Evolve tonight. To be honest, I'm going to be watching Evolve over Dynamite tonight. That's just what it's going to be. Evolve is just such a more interesting show right now because of the champions that we have. Hot take or not, I would enjoy watching Evolve more than Dynamite. So I'm going to be watching that. I'm going to be doing a review of Evolve after. So stay tuned for that for tonight. But yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed, and I will see y'all boys in the next one. Deuces.